everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. It is so crazy hot outside here that I'm not even wearing a black shirt, which I think is the first time I've done that on camera in a long time. But anyway, AC's on, so hopefully I can filter out the audio good enough. But let's jump in and see what we've got going on the past week. First up, Dave from the Shiro crew recently posted a good reference chart that shows the differences between Sega Saturn optical drive emulators. And they're all there, and all of the different specs are there as well, including the cost, availability, whether they could be used as RAM carts or what type of RAM carts, what some of the boot speeds or shortcomings might be. It's really just a great reference for what to expect from each of these. And, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions did that video a couple months ago comparing them as well, but having just a written reference chart like this, I think, is excellent and something that anybody who is on the fence about which one to buy should absolutely reference and just kind of see if there's anything that jumps out at you. My personal favorite device for optical drive emulation on the Saturn is absolutely the Saru, specifically the very well-built one sold by J&T Studios with that really nice case from Retro Gamer Store. But there are obviously shortcomings of that, which are detailed right here in this chart. I think the number one thing might be if you have a Saturn with a cartridge port that's completely destroyed, which it's rare to see them completely destroyed, but I could see that if they're a little finicky, you might not want to rely on it. And of course, not all homebrew runs on it. Derek would slap me in the face if I didn't mention that part of it. But, it's something that it's worth noting because while, yes, some homebrew, you could just burn a CDR and use the Saru to boot that. What if you don't have a working CD-ROM drive? And not all will work with that workaround. So certain homebrew would either have to be tailored to the Saru or there'd have to be software changes made. And it's just one of those things where while I personally love it, it's not the choice for everybody, but the price is certainly there. But some of the other ones like the Fenrir aren't very expensive either. So just check it out, see which one works best for you. And I really appreciate guides like this and charts and stuff because I just think it makes choosing these things a lot better for people. Next up, the store called The Peaceful Outcome is now selling rubber feet for the Nintendo 64, and you have two different choices. The first is for $5, and it's a plug that sits inside the circular plastic feet that come on all Nintendo 64s with a rubber push-in insert at the end. And the second choice is a 3D printed replacement for those plastic feet that have the rubber built into those as well, and that's $6.50. And I thought this was important enough to talk about because if you have a setup where it doesn't really matter if your console slides around, then it doesn't matter at all. But I've had many setups where I had tight cable management and it would be easy for the consoles to slightly shift out of place. And in those scenarios, maybe that could have messed something up, but really it was just an aesthetic. They wouldn't be centered even after I took the time to make them all look nice. So having rubber feet for that would have been worth the $5 or $6.50 to me. But I have had certain scenarios where they were really required. And the one that stands out the most by far is some HDMI switches and splitters that I've used, where without the feet, they would slowly back itself off of my shelf. And if I didn't slide it forward every week or so, it would eventually just fall off the side or be dangling, hanging by a wire. So I had to put some industrial strength, double-sided sticky feet on those for it to stop moving as much. And it still did kind of shift, but not nearly as bad. So while it might seem silly that I'm making a big deal about rubber feet for the N64, I think if you need these, you already know, and I should just stop talking. And if you don't, you don't care. So, thanks to the store, The Peaceful Outcome, for making these. The only other thing to note is I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these kits only include the circular rubber, not the rubber that's on the back of the N64s. But I can't remember ever seeing those ripped off because you don't need to remove them to get to the screws. So I think those are always just on there. But let us know in the comments. I mean, maybe those are falling off and the Peaceful Outcome should also offer those as well, or maybe everybody's just stuck on since you don't have to pull them off to get to screws or anything. But I'd certainly be interested to see if anybody had them fall off. But yeah, anyway, check out the links if you're interested. Now it's time for this week's Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm just going to skim through these and give my thoughts where I feel like it, but if you want all the details and visual examples, please check out Lou's video. First up, some new wallpapers have been released by Ronnie Snice and Anime Otaku, and they're based on Phoenix, Rygar, and Pac-Land. So you could download them manually or just in the Update All script, but like I always say, they're free and they're awesome. So just get them. And if you don't like them, press the one button to turn them off, but you'll like them, trust me. Next up, Wizzo posted a preview of what the text-based user interface for Zapparoo will look like, and it's going to provide a more organized interface for working on Zapparoo right from your Mister. I think those are called TUIs, right? Not GUIs, but awesome that's being worked on, so thanks, Wizzo. Next up, Hotego has released a beta core for Patreon subscribers that support 2 new arcade games, Return to Ishtar and Genpei. And as always, as soon as all the bugs are worked out, those will go public and you can just get them like normal. Next up, user Glenn Pedgen, and I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Everybody knows I'm terrible at pronunciation. But they spoke about a tool they're creating called TransFS that looks to provide a way to access your ROM library from any device. It's described as a fused-based virtual file system that presents structured, emulator-friendly views of software archives without modifying their original format by dynamically mapping archive.org content into the file layouts required by various emulation platforms. And it eliminates the need for local file extraction, renaming, or repackaging. So I love all of this stuff, and thank you to any devs who want to work on that, but I also would really, really, really love to see some kind of RetroNAS implementation for this. Even if it's just software where you point it to your RetroNAS directory and it's not integrated into it, that would work, which it might work with this as well. But that way you could just make sure that your ROMs are always synced up to a database where everybody has the newest ROM hacks, the newest language translations, and all the greatest stuff that you could get. Because, sometimes, especially the older that you get, your time is so limited that if you have to spend 15, 20 minutes trying to figure out how to get all this stuff working, you're just not going to play the game. You're going to play something you already have. So that would certainly be a big help. So anybody feel like working on anything like that? Or maybe this will be it. You just need to aim it at the right place. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Next up, Hotego also released a new beta for the arcade game Metro Cross. And also, the Ypsilon has updated the downloader to version 2.2. It now has a native binary that will run much faster. So the Ypsilon's been killing it with updates lately to update all, the downloader, and all this other awesome stuff. And Update All has also been updated to version 3.2.3.1, which includes the ability to use the new native binary. So now the sped up process could be taken advantage of even with Update All. Next, Reverend Gumby has officially released the Super Cassette Vision Core, which is based on a console from 1984 that was only released in Europe and Japan. There's also a test build of the Commodore PET 2001 computer core that has added disk support, and you could get that core from the Mr. Forums. On GitHub, Rowan Underwood developed an alternate way of filtering out cores in games you aren't using on your Mister. They've created a script that scans your games and folders and deletes cores and directories based on if the game folders are empty. So obviously use this at your own risk, but I love that you could tackle this from the opposite point of view. I personally like going into Update All and the downloader INI and editing that script to remove cores that I don't need, but I think this is definitely a good choice and something that people might be relying on if they set up their SD card a little bit different. The Ypsilon has also added 2 new arcade filters that will help arcade cabinet owners with rotated screens, which means that the whole end of that Mr. Arcade setup I did is now completely obsolete. I should try to do at least a YouTube short or something updating it so people could see this thing in action, because now it's much easier. So thanks again. And the Saturn core has a ton of updates to it, including things for 3D pad digital mode. You could use the Mr. date and time for the system date and time, which is really handy. Added support for the DevRAM cartridge, dual mission sticks, a ton of other stuff, including the Sega STV core. That's been available to manually download and test, but now you could just run the update and be able to play Saturn-based arcade games, which, yeah, I know a lot of them are just like the Saturn versions, but this is still awesome, and I still just want to play Radiant Silvergun via the STV core. I know, it's basically the same thing. I don't care. I want to do it, and now I can just by running Update All. A core for Konami's 1982 arcade game Tutankhamun. Obviously, I have a feeling I know what they're talking about there. And it's a game combining a maze shoot 'em up with light puzzle solving elements. There's some more videos going on about Mr. Multisystem 2. So if you want to watch those, definitely check them out. I talked about the one that Ken made a week or two ago and loved that one. So links are there if you want to see the others. Next, the System 18 light gun shooter Laser Ghost is now playable on the Mister as a beta core, and I would love to see that one get Sinden light gun support or maybe some other support to it, because I think that there are a bunch of pretty cool arcade like light gun shooter games that would be fun to play, and the Sinden is the easiest way to do that. There's others that are better, maybe a little less latency, maybe a little more accurate after calibration, but none of them will just have you load up the border and go from there. So hopefully that could be added. And also, here's a big one, but hold off. This isn't the giant announcement yet, but it's still pretty big in my opinion. Slammy's CDI core has now been officially released, but no digital video cartridge support yet. So basically, any game that doesn't rely on that cartridge, you could now play that core right on Mister, which is incredible. Thank you so much to Slammy for doing this. I absolutely love that we can play CDI games on there now. But the big one is when digital video cartridge support is added. And you know that as soon as it is, I'm going to get with you hell once again and again play through Thunder in Paradise, just because I really do think that's the best FMV I've ever played, because it's still playable today. The boat scene in the beginning is still awful, though. I wish there's some way to skip that. But I still love the rest of the game, so that's all pretty exciting. Anyway, thanks as always to Lou for keeping up with this stuff, because there's zero chance I could do this on my own. So if you rely on Lou's news as much as I do, please consider supporting on Patreon. I'm very happy to. And if not, just subscribe on YouTube because it's free. Why not? Next up, Mike Chi has just released his own line of RGB cables for a couple of different multi-out styles. The Super Nintendo multi-out, Genesis 2 style, as well as PlayStation and Sega Saturn. And I think the most important thing to remember about these is they're essentially RGB SCART cables. You just get to choose the end, and it's a two-piece design. And I just wanted to make sure I'm very clear about that, because I thought I was clear in the video, but there was still a whole bunch of confusion. So from a functionality point of view, it's essentially every good, super high quality RGB SCART cable, except it's a two-piece design. The first main piece that plugs into your console is a short breakout dongle that has an HD15 connector on the end. So VGA style, but the signal is the exact same RGBS signal you would have gotten from these consoles with every kind of SCART cable. And then the second piece is either a HD15, so VGA style, BNC, or SCART cable that could connect directly to these. So that way you get to choose your output type, but keep the same short dongle for the input type. There was a whole bunch of advantages to this, and maybe you don't need them. Maybe you just need basic RGB SCART cables, or maybe you already have good cables in your setup. So if you get another console, you could consider these as an option, but your setup's already good now. All of those are correct answers, but just remember that, check out the video for all the little details, but the only things you're really going to remember is it's just RGB, so it's not a converter of any kind, and the quality is equal to or better than all of the other solutions out there, including the best ones. The only thing that it wasn't the absolute best at was audio, but while the HD Retrovisions were a hair better, now we're getting into territory where most people can't actually hear the differences with their ears, to the point where most experts probably couldn't hear the difference. So if you're doing MD Fourier testing, keep using the same cables you were using. If you're playing even on a very nice stereo, these are total wins. I did deep dive testing on everything, so check that out in the video. Links to everything are right here. But yeah, just nice to see a different choice available for RGB cables that solves a whole bunch of problems. But I guarantee a bunch of you will either still keep what you have or figure out a different solution. The existing RGB SCART or HD Retrovision cables might still be fine for you, but it's another great choice that you should consider. Next up, the developer Rumblemints has just released another NES to SNES conversion, this time for the game Life Force. So this release includes 5 different MSU1 audio tracks as a choice if you have anything that could play it, like the FX Pack Pro or Mister or certain emulators. And it also has the original soundtrack if you're using Membler's audio emulator, if you just want to play the regular audio track as well. There's also 8 different color palettes to choose from, which is super important because the NES doesn't generate colors the same way most other consoles do. So what looks right to you might be different than another person. So it's great to have those choices. And there's also the ability to set difficulty and give yourself up to 99 lives when starting. So if you'd like, you could download just the Super Famicom file if you don't want to use the MSU soundtracks, or the full zip if you want everything right in it. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about these before, well done NES to SNES conversions, like the ones from Rumble Mints and the developer Infidelity, are very important because you're essentially getting the exact same game, but without any of the sprite flicker, or very little, and without any of or very little slowdown as well. So it's my personal opinion that these are the way the developers would have wanted the games to perform if the original NES was powerful too. That's, just my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me, but all of these conversions are absolutely my go-to versions of these games now, because I still get to experience the same game the same way, just without any of the hiccups. So it's totally up to you if you want to try it, but all of these are free and I love them. So absolutely give them a try if you're interested. If you just want to see what it's like, Rumblemints uploaded a full playthrough, so you could just kind of skip through the video and see what it's like. And I'm a big fan of these things, and I appreciate the developers that put the time into this. And I've actually never played Life Force before, or at least I don't remember. So maybe I'll get a chance to do a live stream testing this out at some point in the future, just to see what it was like. And of course, I'll do a little bit of the NES version, a little bit of the SNES conversion, just to see the differences. But looks like a pretty cool game. Next up, the PicoGUS sound card can now also act as an optical drive emulator. So let me back up for a moment in case anybody's unaware. The PicoGUS is a $50 homebrew sound card for retro PCs that could emulate the Gravis Ultrasound, the Sound Blaster, and it's basically something that's kind of a must-have for retro PC owners, because even if yours is working perfectly, if you're getting really into this stuff, having a homebrew solution that's Raspberry Pi based is definitely something that would be an advantage, especially at its lower price point. But now with the USB port on the side, you could load CD-ROM images up, and it emulates a Panasonic CD-ROM drive that could have drive speeds between 2x and 4x depending on which modes that you're running in. The Sound Blaster mode features CD audio, but the emulated drive is around 2x speed, and the mode is very demanding, so sometimes you might get stuttering in certain games, which anybody who's old enough to remember, we did back in the day just using CD-ROM drives. But USB mode drive speeds are at 3x to 4x. So you would need a separate sound card for that mode, but it's still nice to know that you could just have pretty easy CD-ROM emulation in a device that you might already own if you're a retro PC user. So if you want more info, definitely check out Lou's post, and it just seems like such an awesome sound card anyway, but the fact that you get this bonus functionality on top of it makes it kind of a must-buy for anybody who's into retro PCs and needs an ISA-based sound card for it. So many features built right into it. Next up, Neo Vera has just posted a guide showing you how to get started with the BackBit Neo Geo ROM cart. And sure, you could try to hunt down a zip file that might have all of this stuff pre-configured, but knowing how to do it from scratch is a really good skill to have, because what if you have new Neo Geo homebrew that you might want to apply to it, or what if something goes wrong and you want to switch ROM versions? It's always good to know how to set up something from scratch like this. So Neo goes directly into it, from how to copy the files over to how to do firmware updates, and as well as does some demos as well. So this is just one of those videos that I wanted to share and archive here on RetroRGB, because I think people who are trying to work on the BackBit cart might just need some help with that stuff. And if you want more info on the BackBit cart, Scarlet Sprites did a review of it a while back, and I posted a very quick video that was a YouTube short that just showed its loading speed compared to other solutions, showing how fast this thing actually boots games. So it seems like an awesome choice for Neo Geo MVS users. It's got a ton of features, and now if you want to do a manual setup, Neo's got you covered. It has the video for you. Also, just a shout out to Neo Vera that they were one of the people who helped figure out the Saru's folder structure thing the other week to make it that easy to do that setup guide. So thank you very much for your help there as well. That's really appreciated, and I hope I got your name right. It looks like Neo Vera, but it could be Neo C version A. I don't know. I'm a moron. Correct me in the comments, please. Next up, Marco Retro recently posted a video comparing different PVM, BVMs, and multi-format JVC monitors, including some high-end consumer CRTs like the Lurva. Did I say that right? Finally, after 20-something years, but 25 years of getting it wrong, but whatever. The video was great, and while the video started out as kind of like a here's how I chose the best CRT for my setup, the comparisons that were in there and the examples of each were so good that I really wanted to share it. Because while, of course, you have the moire pattern that you always get shooting any CRT ever, you still got a sense of what each of these were like and what to expect. And I think one of the really awesome ones was the zoomed in 480i shot, so you could see the complaints that some people had about those. Although I personally think it's such a weird and unique experience that I loved 480i on the D32 and even the 1000 TVL E series BVM. I'm not sure if I would say it's my favorite way to see 480i content, like videos and movies and stuff like that. However, it was such an amazing and unique experience. If you own one of these, definitely try watching a TV show on it or something. But you could finally see the difference between each of them on there. And there was different stuff shown, like different resolutions, different setups. And the only thing that I don't know if I would say I disagree, but I don't fully agree with, is that I thought 480p looked absolutely awesome on my 20L5. But I did completely agree, and have always talked about in the Q&As, in that if you're looking for a monitor, a CRT monitor, that you could do 15 kilohertz as well as 480p, consider getting two. Get your PVM that does 480i and 240p, and then get a really nice PC CRT monitor that can do 480p and up, and that's for all of those games. And while there are some scenarios in which multi-formats would be better, the biggest by far is if you have space constraints. So you live in a tiny apartment and you just have room for one CRT. I totally get that. But from a cost perspective, it is almost always better just to buy two, and significant difference in price. But overall, I just thought this was an awesome video. I really wanted to share it with everybody. There's a very fun cameo at the end, followed by some even more awesome CRT shots. And I think the example that I used in the post is, I think that most people would agree that you don't need a $250,000 car to drive around and go to the store and do your errands. But anybody who likes cars could appreciate it. And you could watch videos on that, or you could go to a car show and still get in your own car and think there's nothing wrong with it. And I think it's the exact same thing. I still 100% stand by my comment that I've always made, that any CRT that still works with basically any connection, composite, still looks amazing for older video games and even older TV shows and stuff like that as well. And you don't need anything more than that to enjoy the experience. But sometimes it's nice to peek behind the curtain and see the high-end stuff, even if it's something that's really not in your plans to get. It's nice to just appreciate some of the different stuff out there, but you don't need it. But I think most people watching would at least like to see what all of these things are like and some of the comparisons. So great video from Marco. And, if you're a CRT nerd, check it out. Just a quick PSA before I go. A bunch of manufacturers have been either confirming or adding Switch 2 support to their controllers. So if you have existing controllers that you wanted to use with the Switch 2, just give it a try. And if it doesn't work, or if there's something weird, go to the manufacturer's website, download the firmware update, and see if that fixes the issue for you. I wanted to mention it. And also, if you're looking to buy any of these controllers too, maybe check before you buy just to make sure that it works. But it's really looking like a lot of companies are just putting full support behind this, which is great because there are a lot of awesome things, like the Octopus Fight Stick just added support for Switch 2. So if you have a controller that you really like, that's comfortable in your hands, that fits either your games or your setup or whatever else, definitely give it a try on the Switch 2 if you own one of those, to see if it's compatible. And if not, just check the manufacturer, because it was impressive to me to see how many manufacturers stood up and just said, hey, we're already testing, we've added this, or it already works or whatever else. So just figured, wasn't sure how to write that in a post. So I just figured, flapping about it at the end of the podcast might be good enough to get the info out there. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and as always, thanks to everybody who supports in any way possible, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.